Children as young as kindergarten to be ashamed of their skin color.
Which is nothing more than modern day racism.
Replacing the racism of the past with the racism of the critical race theory.
Ahistorical claims about our nation's origin.
Says the United States is rotten to its core.
Indoctrinating children.
You're either an oppressor or a victim.
And dumb as a bag of hair.
Whoa. Okay. That all sounds really bad and true. Kids coming home, saying they're being taught to hate themselves and their nation and question the wisdom of our many dear leaders, being told it's okay to be racist to them, sobbing, pleading to not be white anymore. The teachers shove them, pointing, cackling, white! Plus, a lot of the teachers are white. They've been spitting on them and stuff. Anyway, let's hear from the parents.
Here with more are three parents from Loudoun County, Virginia. We have Jessica and Fred and Patty.
We've got this mother of two criticizing a Colorado school board over the impact critical race theory is having on students.
For another example of everyday Americans fighting back for their liberties, Keisha King is a Florida mom who took a bold stance against critical race theory, claiming that the teaching of race is in fact racist.
Joining me now is Loudoun County parent Ian Pryor and Kim Klasick, president of Red Renaissance.
Our next guests were both there. Father of three and U.S. Army vet Joe Mobley and a teacher at Douglas School in Loudoun County, Jeremy Wright. Both joined me from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Guys, good morning to you.
You gonna deliberately teach kids this white kid right here got it better than you because he white? You gonna purposely tell a white kid, oh, the black people are all down and suppressed? How do I have 2 medical degrees if I'm sitting here oppressed?
Sandra, the Florida State School Board has now voted to ban critical race theory from being taught in public schools in the Sunshine State. It comes as more parents across the country are pushing back against so-called woke curricula being taught in classrooms. Bridget Ziegler is a mother of 3 girls and a Sarasota County school board member. She joins us now.
I'm joined now by Carrie Lucas, a Virginia mom of 5, and her 13-year-old daughter Meredith, currently a Virginia public school 8th grader.
Here to react is Alexandria Little League parent and an informal advisor to the 2016 Trump campaign, Barry Bennett.
Wow. What an amazing outpouring of hold up. Can we run that last clip again?
Here to react is Alexandria Little League parent and an informal advisor to the 2016 Trump campaign, Barry Bennett.
Did he, say that guy was an informal advisor to the 2016 Trump campaign? That's a weird coincidence. How Barry Bennett, the concerned coach that Fox is interviewing there, also happens to be a political operative and lobbyist for the Republican Party? I mean, surely that's just one. And the rest of these parents and teachers are, what's that, Mr. Finger? You love where I've been putting you? Oh, and every single one of them is a political activist or operative or lobbyist. And in fact, of those people I just showed being interviewed, along with the Trump advisor, there were multiple right-wing talk radio hosts, several GOP consultants and professional commentators, the founders of multiple conservative super PACs, a conservative author, and the former senior domestic policy analyst for the House Republican Policy Committee, amongst many other things, and multiple conservative activists and think tank members, including one with connections to Turning Point USA. Literally zero of those people were fresh off the street, non-politically tied individuals expressing their concern about critical race theory and their children. Yes, it turns out that a lot of this grassroots concerned parent movement sure feels like it was put there artificially, like some sort of artificial grass or fake turf, if you will. So while it's important to not handwave every single parent or teacher as some kind of operative for the GOP, it does seem as if the most vocal of these concerned Americans, the reasons this is a thing anyone's even talking about, aren't simply everyday people suddenly concerned with their kids' education. Like this Florida mom named Keisha King, who was in that montage I showed. Well, she made a bunch of headlines for being a black woman standing up against the evils of critical race theory. But when you just sort of scroll down, most of these articles end up noting that she's the co-founder of one chapter of a group called Moms for Liberty, an organization that has branches fucking everywhere in the country. And if you Google the words Moms for Liberty and critical race theory, you'll soon discover that pretty much every article about a concerned parent will eventually note that they are a member of this group. A group that, before they were so worried about critical race theory, were out protesting mask mandates in schools back in April. A group that was founded by 2 ex-school board members members, one of whom has been accused of physically disrupting classrooms, and the other was voted out after opposing pro-LGBT guidelines and then getting shit mailed to her, like literal actual shit. They're just bitter, ousted, and toxic people trying to re-involve themselves in schools. And yay, they succeeded! But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The question is, what is critical race theory, and is it being taught to our children? Very briefly, the basic tenets of critical race theory, or CRT, emerged out of a framework for legal analysis in the late 1970s and early 1980s, created by legal scholars Derek Bell, Kimberly Crenshaw, and Richard Delgado, among others. Less briefly, critical race theory argues that racism is not just a matter of personal prejudice or explicit legal discrimination, but can be found in everyday social practices and is embedded in our legal system. It places specific emphasis on history and context with relation to discussion of race in legal discourse, and seeks to understand how white supremacy was created and how it is maintained, and to examine its relationship to professed ideals such as the rule of law and equal protection. It argues that race is not only a social construct, but a legal construct, and that while the biological reality of race is false, there is a very real material dimension to being raced in the United States of American society, and that this dynamic has been both produced and sustained by law. It finds fault with the ideal of color blindness, which ignores effects of centuries of documented racism, and instead embraces the notion of race consciousness. It uses concepts such as white privilege and intersectionality to better understand the dynamics of the social, material, and legal inequalities throughout our society. It aims to expose the racial dimensions to the meritocracy mythology. It is a political practice, a progressive activist movement, and an intellectual identity for scholars of color that takes the form of left intervention into race discourse and race intervention into left discourse that addresses the law's treatment of race from a self-consciously critical perspective. It believes that reform is required within the legal system itself, law schools and courtrooms. Critical race theory is not only concerned with understanding the ways in which our history of racist laws and social practices have created racial inequality, and how white supremacy is maintained within our society and through our legal system, but critical race theory is an intentional and explicit effort to change this dynamic. So, is this being taught to our elementary, middle school, and high school students? The short answer is nah. And if you are skeptical of this claim and are a parent, ask your child to watch this clip and then get back to me.
Critical race theory has certainly connections to any kind of critical intellectual discourse, but it's also connected to critical legal studies, which was not committed to sort of inheriting all of the kind of Gramscian and Marxian sort of ideas that you're talking about. And again, even the type of Marxism you're talking about is a very narrow, thin, sort of crude Marxism, or even what we call vulgar Marxism, which alleges a relationship between economic base and cultural superstructure that is one-to-one, when in fact, what most Marxists have argued, and what certainly most Marxists post the mid part of the 20th century have argued, is that it's a much more complicated dynamic than even Gramsci himself argues at in the Prison Notebooks, about this idea of hegemony and how it happens along a compromise equilibrium, whereby some people, or whereby on the one hand, we absolutely are hostage to the economic conditions around us, but on the other hand, structures and states and institutions also appeal to our own desires and our own interests and our own needs. It's a much more dynamic and complicated relationship than you're talking about. And as far as sort of structures, again, you're making a connection between structures in terms of institutional structures that I was talking about, and the particular type of structures that, say, a Saussure would be talking about in terms of structuralism. That's not actually what I was talking about. And that's not what most people are talking about when they talk about systems and structures. Again, that's a very tight correlation you draw. And if we were to accept that correlation, then sure. But it's not only that we're not accepting it, it's actually not what we're talking about. And postmodernism, again, plays upon a range of things. I'm sorry?
I said you know a lot about this, actually. That you know a very...
So did your kid get all that? Did you get all that? Did James Lindsay get all that? This is not light reading, folks. This is highly sophisticated and intellectually rigorous. It's the kind of thing you study with a dictionary at the ready. Saying that children are learning critical race theory in our schools is like saying kids are learning quantum physics because they started learning about atoms and molecules. Critical race theory is something that is being taught in college, primarily in law school, and involves critical thinking and debate, where students are encouraged to examine the ideas involved and ask whether or not they hold up to scrutiny. Something critics of critical race theory and proponents of debate should like. So as I said, the short answer to, is this being taught in our public schools? Nah. The longer answer to this question, it's longer.